Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with at the table,
Costas Alevizopoulos.
good Irish name. Say it one more time.
Costas Alevizopoulos.
He's making that up. Supercalifragilistic. How's it go? Supercalifragilistic.
Yeah.
And on the phone, we have Dave Anderson. Can you say the word, Dave Anderson? Supercalifragilistic.
Supercalifragilistic.
That sounds Greek.
Yeah.
That sounds Greek.
I cannot say it.
Well, let's get rolling, guys. Podcast 260. That means 5 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, 5 years. Maybe we should stop. I guess we're going to continue. Andy Fitzell, the founder, he is going to be in the States starting in August, so we'll get him on maybe next. We're talking about documenting development, but before we do that, let's talk about a request. TJ Tisdale, who I met through you, would like to be a guest on the podcast. I think we could get into trash talking. Dave Anderson versus TJ. Tell us a little about TJ.
Well, I mean, it would probably have some entertainment value, but it'd be an early round fight. It'd be a first or second round knockout for me with TJ.
So you're saying you're a verbal heavyweight and he's not?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that he'd go down early, but he can talk trash with the best of them. He's a great guy. You know TJ as well as anyone. I met him on court. Well, now it's court number 28. He came in for a job interview about 29, 30, probably 30 years ago, and he had played small college tennis, NAIA tennis in Oklahoma, and I remember hitting balls with him, and he was a little out of shape for being so young, and but he had a incredible way about him, charisma, personality, passionate, and he jumped on the staff, and really TJ kind of onboarded where had him go through the academy like a player, and then give feedback on kind of from his perspective what it felt like to go through the academy to maybe help us out in terms of what our coaches were doing or not doing. And so he did a lot of that for extended periods. And then, you know, when he wasn't teaching, he just went through every lesson I taught privately, I remember, as a hitter. And he acquired the foundation and the system so quickly from that. And he went from kind of a, terrific athlete to at 5'11" I played basketball with him on a team, and, you could alley-oop to him and he could throw it down. And but he got to the point where I watched him beat really good tennis players, watched him destroy Michael Flanagan, like 2-2, who had just led Stanford to the NCAA title. And a lot of very good tennis players that he was able to take down. He had great serve. He won what was a big tournament in Texas called the Cotton Bowl for years. It was kind of like from the quarters on, probably main draw level of futures. And he did it without ever facing a break point one year against really good players like Flanagan and many others. And, he really, the shot that I think separated him, he talked about it often, is what we call a tabletop, because TJ had such incredible speed that anything that was in, 3/4 court didn't even have to be really a short ball. For him, his short ball range was so much different because of speed, and he could just take it and move through an approach, and it was very difficult to pass or lob him.
I go through a few TJ stories, but it was just right before we came on air, I read this text. Hey, I want to be a guest on your podcast, TJ Tisdale. Well, I've sent many students to Dave's place, Brookhaven out in Dallas. Beautiful tennis place. It's like a city unto itself, tennis place. So a young girl I had sent out there had a problem with nerves and this and that, didn't play very well. And I knew that as soon as I got there, because she had spent quite a bit of time working with us, that TJ was going to give me the gears. So the very first thing I did is found out where he was teaching, and I hid myself behind the curtain. And so as soon as right away, he's just started giving me a hard time. So you taught this girl. And actually just today I told some kids, I said, I tell people, keep it a secret that I've coached you. So this poor girl, she just struggles mentally, emotionally. And as a TJ, I just hid behind the curtain and I watched your last lesson. And he went, uh-oh. He'd kind of taken that one off. But one time I was at, I want to ask you about this. I know you're heading there tomorrow. I was at Kalamazoo, rainy day, and Crystal Schultz was there playing. Was his father, Bud, who was a guest on our podcast. Never played a junior tournament, 39 in the world. So we were having breakfast, and I just got to go. And I said, TJ, this guy would basketball one-on-one would beat you like the bongos. And they just started going at it, which was really good. But my son, Connor, he went to your place quite a bit when he was, 13, 14, 15. But he hadn't been there, and he always wanted to go back. And I said, well, you got to go, when you go back, you're going to play TJ. And I'm sure TJ wasn't in peak form, but I said, this is exactly what's going to happen. And the one thing was John McEnroe, Ivan Lendl, where McEnroe said, I have more talent in my pinky than you have in your whole body. So TJ throws that line at Connor. And I said, the next thing he's going to do, because Connor was one of those guys, he didn't have a water jug. He'd find an empty tennis ball can, rinse it out, fill it with water. And I said, he's going to walk around the net post. He's going to kick over your water. Then the next time around the net post, he's just going to bump into you. So Connor came out on the winning side, but he came back. We were based in Tampa, Florida at the time. He said, how did you know? It's one of those things.
Yeah.
Knowing without knowing. But see, with your large program and you have kids at all these nationals around the country, I know you don't go to the zoo on a regular basis. I know you've been there a bunch, but how did you decide which nationals you go to? Why are you going to the zoo versus San Diego?
Well, I mean, it's like any, in a perfect world, and kind of what we talked about in last week's podcast, if there was regionalized funding through the USTA instead of just building mega facilities and things like that. And I mean, if I wouldn't even have to be a coach for our program, for instance, but if somebody from the DFW area was sent to the various nationals to help manage the players, and I think that'd be a great thing. But in our case, we can't just send them out and fund them. So, we give everybody the opportunity to kind of request coaching. And so I actually have a coach. I mean, I'm just going up on my own to the zoo. But we have a coach that has been, appointed, Adrian Ortiz, great guy, played at UT, and he traveled with me to the Easter Bowl and that. And but for me, it's I'm lucky. My wife, Jenna, she understands the nature of this, and so for us, it's a vacation, going to Kalamazoo, and we're gonna kind of have fun just supporting the players and helping them out anyway, and negotiating with not negotiating, but managing that scene, because there's every university is up there with their hoodies on. So yeah,
I love the tournament. Let me tell you a few things about Kalamazoo. For our listeners, I know Dave, Costa, it's a nationals, as you know, for 16, 18 boys. So the USTA, they have a meeting, and they had to reconvene because they came out of the meeting and said, no more tournaments on college campuses. Because it was a little bit of a problem. You can't, not every university can have pro tournaments, where the wild cards go and this and that. So they came out of the meeting, no more major tournaments on college campuses. And someone said, what about Kalamazoo? And everybody kind of looked at each other, then they had to reconvene and go, no. So, that's not a professional tournament, but it is a major tournament.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about document development, get into video first, but charting. So how many cups of yogurt will you have with the blueberries while you're up there? Is it your 2 a day or?
Yeah, I love both those things. So I would say that 2 a day might be conservative.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know,
they do it right. It's the strawberries and cream. It's like Wimbledon. No,
Yeah.
I mean it does have the flavor, the feeling of a big time pro event.
Yeah, it's fun to go to. I haven't been for a while, and about a year ago, I made a decision that the remainder of my life I was going to try to get out and do what I did in the early part of my career much more, and go and enjoy and watch the kids compete at some of these tournaments. I sneak out to the local ones whenever I can, but I know that it's difficult to find the time, but I just started making the time for it to try to get out to local UTRs and just 5-6 hours of being out there. I think it's good for the spirit.
Kalamazoo, home of the NCAA men's hockey champion, Western Michigan.
Yeah,
I guess they're going to have a beautiful hockey rink opening up soon. I have a brother-in-law who's from Kalamazoo. He graduated from Michigan, graduated from Harvard. Doesn't tell anybody he went to Harvard, but tells everybody he went to Michigan. Our number one tennis mentor, Vic Braden, graduate of Zoo College, Stowe Stadium, lived in the ballroom at one time at Kalamazoo.
Wow.
I have a photo, Paul Showers, a graduate of the Zoo, from Monroe, Michigan. He wasn't connected to Vic obviously from an instructional standpoint, so many years apart, but actually one of our students, David Weiss, taught him how to play. He rebuilt his game after he played at Kalamazoo. So anyway, he gave me a photo. It's black and white, but Kalamazoo used to be on red clay. And in the 18s, every match was best of 5 sets. And our fact checker, Andres Barbosa, I'm going to guess 1959. My second guess would be 1956. But Rod Laver won Kalamazoo. He actually played Donald Dell. And I talked to his daughter, who's been up here a few times with her kids. I want to get Donald Dell on the podcast, but a little bit older. It's what an amazing background he has. But Kalamazoo, what a great tradition. So are you there for very long?
Well, our flight got delayed Chicago yesterday, so we just had to readjust to Friday departure. And then I'll be returning back to the club on Wednesday. Coach Adrian will be there for the entire time, but so I get to see 3-4 rounds. Yeah, it'll be good. I'll hopefully get to watch a lot of good tennis and hang around the courts all day.
Well, we could go through a few stories on Kalamazoo. I was there one time for the entire tournament. My son Connor, he had pulled a muscle in his stomach, and he really hadn't played much summer tennis because he went to Florida State just before he transferred to Ohio State. So he goes to Florida State, which is a smart thing the coaches do, is get on campus, get used to being in college before the fall semester starts. So he truly was injured. People actually pull out of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But we stayed, and in fact, it was recently at his wedding, and not Austin Gonzalez, but Gonzalez Austin, who played at Vanderbilt. Really good athlete, really good guy. Big buddies with Connor. He's best man at his wedding, or one of the 3 or 4 with the speaking part. So I didn't do any coaching directly, but Connor was coaching him. Colette Lewis on Zoo Tennis, she put a blurb on her blog that Gonzalez beat Jack Sock. And Sock, he got the toss more out to the right, but at one point he was tossing it way over his head. I said, just take that early. And I said, just keep going, make him move to his right, And, but Connor coached him the last couple of rounds, and he wins the tournament. But Jack Sock was yelling out like juniors will do, I can't, finals of 16s, I can't believe I'm losing to Gonzalez Austin with, there's another one with TJ. TJ was so not slack, but it was just hit and giggle. He was just slapping the guys on the back and having some fun. And I won't mention the player's name from your program, but I spent a lot of time with him. He was sent to me several times. And he he wasn't really injured. He was faking injury. And when somebody else from your program wanted to have a hit, one of the younger guys, he said he was injured. And I said, TJ, I said, this is what they would do in other parts of the country. You know, I have intensity, but I can fake intensity. And I have to really keep a lid on it. So I grabbed this young player from Brookhaven by the neck, and it put his nose in his spaghetti. And I said, you're going to hit with this guy tomorrow morning at whatever time, get up and hit with him at 6:45. And I said, TJ, that is coaching. You know, because TJ was in charge of this guy. I go, what are you telling me he's going to say that right in front of you that he can't, he's too injured? He's too injured to hit balls, but he was playing ultimate frisbee this afternoon. Come on, TJ. How about you give us one Kalamazoo story? We'll start talking about document development. Document? There's the Andy Roddick Golden Bucket Award.
Yeah, there's been some cool things up there. One that always comes to mind is, and again, Coach Creasy, to sit on the podcast with him here several months back, years ago. He wouldn't remember this because I was, just getting started and everything back then. But I ended up sitting next to him, watching Chad Clark play Tad Berkowitz, and Chad Clark played Tad Berkowitz up there, and I think it was a first round, maybe a second round, and Berkowitz, handled the match pretty well, and it was a fairly routine straight set, and I remember Creasy looking over at me and asking if I was watching Chad, and I explained the background connection, and he said this match won't even be competitive in a short time, and so I think that, even though it is a zoo and there undoubtedly is going to be some great play up there as rounds go on, but I think people up there, unfortunately, because of the nature of the event, it does feel very unique and very close to a really well-run pro event. It still isn't pros, and I think it. I think that as people get into that tournament, they can lose their way a little bit as far as perspective.
There was that time with Andy Roddick, but it was just shortly before Andy as well. What was the kid's name from Oklahoma? Crunch Cloberdance, where Andy's playing a match and Crunch did the same thing a few years before him. Is that vomiting? The heat and humidity kicks up by August. It's coming off the hard courts. Wow. So they vomit. There's a few people on the crew the players just keep on going, we had Matt Canola on, who and the players used to play at Baylor when they would do sprint. If you're vomiting, it's like, just keep on going. You don't even slow down. Don't even slow down to rinse your mouth out. I've worked with a lot of Russian players that they've told me, Steve, it is not a good workout if someone doesn't throw up. But Kalamazoo, usually a junior player wins it. So you get out to the finals, and someone who's just really consistent, even into the 18s. In other words, not enough forcing. That happens quite often in the NCAAs too. The kind of inside, track that, some people who ended up as a runner-up in the NCAAs went further in pro tennis. It takes so long to develop a complete all-court game.
Yeah.
But I thought we'd talk a little about document development with our podcast being 5 years old now. I wish we tell juniors all the time not to have wishful thinking. Wish we were more successful with our fundraising efforts. And because we have a large network of people and people are willing to volunteer. Just so many things about our podcast. Like one thing, how many coaches were mentioned? Just because our tennis, of course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, we have the 8-sided pillars, but we mentioned over 100 coaches on that. But documenting, there's so many things we go back with the podcast. We still could, I know there's quite a few juniors when we started it, say they were, 12, 13 years old. And if it's a 3-hour podcast, takes 1% of your week. I know many juniors that are now 18, 19 that we've trained, and they're, from our corner, but they didn't do it. They they just started from the very beginning. To digress, I got a message the other day. People that I sent, you were on that list. People who did some work for Vic. That this gentleman wanted us to have a group of us just talk about the Vic Braden Tennis College back in those days. But for me,
that'd be fun.
let's go with video. For me, we make it a prerequisite. It's mandatory to be filmed, unless someone's just a beginner. So we film. Even if our recreational player, there's always a prevention of injury. Starting a video file, a written file. I don't think people use video enough, and now everybody has a camera in their pocket. With what comes to your mind, Dave, when you think of video?
Yeah, I don't think anybody does it better than you. I actually told Coach Andreas that at about 6:45 this morning, because I think you, through the history of knowing, the time that I've known you, you take the time to make sure that before a ball is hit and any instruction is given, you document exactly the point of entry. And I think that's so critical. And the reason I brought it up this morning is because I think we experienced growing pains, and we've let go of a few things that we had a good hold on in regard to documenting that. And we have a good system now that we're working back towards making sure that nobody is told anything, and there's just a spot they go to. We're trying to, manage the numbers and all of these things of kids. But I just think day one, going through that, and I love, how you can call it whatever you want, player development assessment, if it's advanced player, but it's just an analysis. And I think the way that you have done it and never really wavered on it in terms of you haven't not done it. I think it's hard to do, but I can tell you that it's critical, because what I found is everybody forgets where they were, where their kids were. And it's so important to be able to pull it up, not only the initial filming, but systematically on a whatever quarterly basis, et cetera, to show people, here's where they were. And I think it can win a lot of arguments without having to get into an argument just by flipping video on.
Yeah, we say day one, it's mandatory with no instruction. But that doesn't mean, so you can have somebody come and hit, you're really, obviously really busy, but okay, let's put a camera up on the fence, and okay, we're going to film you just rallying. Sometimes you don't have the manpower. When you're going to film, I've been spoiled over the years to have a lot of people around that can play well, therefore they can feed fairly well. I always think about how they feed, because you want to make the kid look good. You want to put it right in the strike zone. It's not a matter of trying to make them look bad. And number one reason for me to film is no one's going to come back and say, he ruined my game, or I was better before I went there. And, we go even further, with, as you know, filming, hitting targets, skills test. Jeff Lewis, who's been on the podcast several times, he set up some clinics, and that's been mentioned before, but it's where I had a speaking part. Usually I was just assisting Vic Braden, but so I have a speaking part. So Vic used to say about a kid's game, that kid's game, he has no game. He's lucky to find the bathroom. But he says he was so nice, but I would say, no, I'm going about a different way. I think it's just like a reading level. If the kid's in the 9th grade and have a 3rd grade reading level, we need to let them know right away. But the parents need education. And the nice thing about it, when they get the tape. I was actually with you in Boca when we said, okay, how can we do this where we record what we say to the parents, not just record the strokes, but actually, it was back in the day, we'd give them a VHS tape.
Yeah.
With film some more. I have 3 older brothers. It wasn't really fair for my sisters in sport, but I mean, especially my oldest sister, 11 years older than I am. But my older brothers, when they were kids, they didn't use video, but I was filmed. I can remember being filmed at Tam Hockey School. They're filming us skating and doing drills, and that was a big novelty back then. But, how to, the machine is only as smart as its operator. I don't really like it when, they do a split screen. I'd say tennis academies, instructional programs, they do a split screen where, a kid's hitting the forehand next to Federer. And it's like, no, we don't need to have all the bells and whistles. Let's just film the kid's forehand. Let's not tell him he's close. He looks a lot like Roger. As what's happening through that hitting zone. But with filming, we film running, throwing, we film rallying, we film point play, and we film each basic shot from 3 different angles. And then from there, we make a narrated slow motion analysis. And that's where the journey begins. And, then the kid's supposed to watch the tape 3 times, send us notes. But to start a video file and then to go back. Last week we were talking about Craig Tiley when he was offered the job to be director of player development. I remember him saying one time that he didn't like to go back and show the players how bad they were, because it takes away from their confidence. But it's just amazing. Braden was always talking about traces of the old. You could just see when kids, they're trying to deprogram, reprogram. They need a new software program. We've got a couple of kids here that you just know they were lied to. They were told to arch their back, toss over their head. People misinterpret the pros. The pros, they turn the body so much to the right, say it's a right-hander. But it looks like they're really totally arching their back, but they're not. And, then they get their racket on edge and they can hit some spin, but they haven't really properly changed their serve. But the history, to know how they played, their ball striking skills from the get-go with filming match play. Actually, I know you and I were with Robbie Seguzo working with Vince Spadia. And I remember Robbie saying, there's no way you should film him, which is so true. You shouldn't film him off a fed ball. And it's a major bonus if someone is a good player. They have good hitting skills, even to the point where you can have a sparring partner who can mimic people's games. And you just have to just keep the ball coming back, but to film people off a live hit, because it's very artificial in many ways. We have players that they look like $1 million when we say, okay, let's go through the dog and pony show. We're going to refilm you. And, say, I think of the backhand volley, for example, it could be any stroke, but that's not how you play your backhand volley. So what they do in match play, it's interesting. The brain's so sophisticated. Kids can have a different motor programming for shadow swinging, tracing the swing against the wall, hitting off a tee, drop hitting. And it's just like, no, they're not all the same. They're not duplicating that racket pattern, that body movement. I think just filming people's feet and what are they doing with their footwork. I think Jim Lair would film them in between points, film their rituals. I think Braden used to always say with video is hide the camera. I know you were part of some educational labs where we hid the cameras and just let the students say, yeah, okay, you're on your own, just go do this. And Vic used to say, you can really tell if you're doing a really good job coaching when you watch practice when you're not there. When the cat's away, the mice will play. With having juniors break down film, one of the reasons that we still shoot film off film, we're sitting in a classroom right now where we do that, where we have kids make the video. Like I had a 14-year-old the other day. You're really busy. Go, well, okay, I can't do it right now, but I got a 14-year-old who can do it. So we do it twice. So I sent a 14-year-old up to the classroom, and they make a video for another 14-year-old and two parents from the room. And then I go, I'm thinking, did they get it? Is that the one 14-year-old has a wealth of information. Because then confidence, speaking skills. Years ago at Bollettieri's, IMG, they used to have practice press conferences, like a mock press conference, like you're going to be a pro. People don't really have very good speaking skills. When we used to chart each other teaching tennis and with a little fundraising, we could edit that out. I know some people are spending a lot of time editing their podcasts. I know Ivan Ozaretz spends quite a bit of time, but some people, it's all they do. Their job is the podcast. With people videotaping on their own, I think for every kid should have a tripod. They should have, certainly a camera, every telephone, and then have that checklist, you're a hero or zero. And is that 1 minute management, that book that came out in the 80s, The 1 Minute Manager by Blanchard.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take much, but it's like, well, it's kind of boring. We set up a free program called Daily Monitoring Program, and some of the older players, they get busted for just pushing repeat. They didn't do the it just take a few minutes. Steve Roberts, who's a guest on the podcast, he was a Daily Monitoring Program. If you didn't do it, you couldn't hit balls. And we wanted that to be kind of like a pin pal program where the older players within our network would encourage the younger players. We need to come back to that. What else comes to your mind with filming?
Well, I tell you one great idea I got from you on filming. You mentioned a couple of them, just filming the athletes, and you mentioned I don't think it was in a podcast, maybe it was, but you filmed a young boy doing push-ups. So I do that a lot now, because it is amazing. Things that we take for granted from our era: push-ups, running, throwing, pull-ups, dips, doing things that we just had to do throughout elementary school and beyond it. And it's amazing to me. And I'm telling you, I'm not taking a shot at any of the physical trainers out there. My wife was our academy's first trainer, but inevitably these kids who aren't doing push-ups, they're 2 times a week with personal trainers, and they can't do 5 legitimate push-ups. It's kind of mind-boggling to me. I don't quite get it, and but I love that particular thing on filming. And I think that all of us as coaches, we have a little bit of time poverty. I think not just coaches, people in general, and so this one app that I use anyways, when I plug into the TV and the players watching themselves on the big screen, and all I have to do is push record on the app, and it's recording everything slow-mo or whatever we're talking about, my voice, the player's voice, and at the end I just stop, and 2 minutes later it's on their phone. And so it's a very good take-home tennis lesson. And I'm trying to do that a lot. Basically, anytime I utilize video, I'm trying to put it on the phone of the parent and the child that I'm working with, or the player I'm working with, and I think what you experience, everybody does, in that those videos don't get examined. They don't get studied by the people. Ironically, it seems like the people that know they're not going to see it too often tend to do the most with it. But I think video makes teaching meaningful, coaching meaningful. I think it's a convincing tool for players, for parents, and I feel like even in our environment, I'm pushing that concept of constant filming over and over and over. And I don't think it gets done enough here or anywhere.
Push-ups. Steve Robertson. I'd like to make it a story. I heard him say this one time. Do one push-up, you start to grow muscles. I tell people, when you're asked to do push-ups, from a physical standpoint, you're defining yourself as an athlete. I have an older brother who's 10 years older, so he goes away to school. He's 18, so I'm 8, but he lived at home for a long time after college. For a long time, he got a PhD. So I was on the push-up program in the 1960s. Every kid in America knew how many push-ups they could do in a minute, how many squat thrusts they could do in a minute. I remember one semester, entire semester, you and I, Craig Tyler, ran a junior college program on an interim basis. And we just put the camera up on top of this storage room where all the tennis balls were kept. Nice storage room. And not tell anybody. And you film a group of people doing push-ups and squat thrusts, and then you go and you chart that. So, you hear the words filming and charting, they go together. And, with even like ball pickup, to film people during a ball pickup. So we have a nice loft that looks over 3 indoor courts, and we've done that up here. Okay, let's film ball pickup. Then come in and look at it. And then what we do so we don't go crazy is tragedy. A comedy is tragedy with time. We yell it all the time. Run like an Olympian. It's your character. Your character will be defined by how you pick balls up. One thing. Thanks for the compliments on video, but one thing I need to be reprimanded for is I do something that Vic used to do all the time. I just don't do it enough. Is when a kid's being filmed, and again, it comes down to manpower. But like you have a lot of kids who hit the ball really well, and we have kids sent to us who hit the ball really well. We have kids that we've trained. We have 22 kids here today, and they're here from everywhere. And some of them we've known maybe 5 years is the longest. 6 years. And so you have the player hit, and they're hitting their forehand. And then we have the player we've taught behind.
Yeah.
And so then the ball comes out of the ball machine or off being fed. How fast do they turn? Where are they in the court? What's the shape of the swing? What's the body balance? What's the hitting zone? Follow through the end product of the swing. But that's something to mention for sure, is that how Vic used to do that. Also with video is to film from behind, so then they don't have to reverse the image. A cherry picker, that's something that I only tried one time unsuccessfully. It was actually when I was working with you at a college training tennis teachers, is to have a cherry picker to film from up above. Braden, in his book, he tells about how he hitchhiked from Monroe, Michigan to Detroit to watch Don Budge hit backhands and almost fell out of the rafters. But he's filming straight down. And, power is related to radius squared. The players hit so far away from their body. People will find shortcuts. We have those portable backboards, and we put down pieces of plastic on each pole and make sure that they have to get outside the pole, outside the piece of plastic, because if they don't, they're just too close to the ball. We don't use the SHIT word on this podcast. Maybe the second 5 years we'll start adding a little profanity. Maybe that'll be better. But SSDD, same sugar, different day. And you can chart. I've done this in the classroom. Who's going to drop the pencil the most? And what's amazing is, so a kid will drop a pencil, and I look right at him. Was that an accident? Were you tired? And that was an accident. But they've lost focus. And the same kid is, we do this exercise. We hang onto the net. You're stretching out the hips. And third day in a row, kid, the tidy bin on the net post. Third day in a row, same kid kicks over the tidy bin. And I think attendance. Then at the end of the year, that's so important. And obviously parents can't get there all the time on time, especially if they have more than 2 kids. 2 kids, you can have man-to-man defense. 3 kids, it's zone coverage. Punctuality, when people are late. If you have interns, you have student assistants, you have a captain or, older players helping out younger players. When you say, okay, go get a water break, and as soon as you're done, come back to the court, shadow swing your serve, left-handed, right-handed. And if you don't do that, I mean, you want to get your water, be the first person back. First person back. Back in the day before homeschool, at the end of the year, you were part of this, we would give out those hoodies where it would be a white hoodie and the color of the program was green and white, and we just say go over their heart because we just tell people go. And we kept track of how many hours they put in, the program plus factor. If someone comes here to visit, we tell the kids it should be a life-changing experience. And kids are here, a boy from Boston went home today, and it's parents tell me all the time, they come here for 3 weeks and they go home and it wears off. What do they do when they get up in the morning? It's not just a matter of charting, but we ask people to chart just 10 points now, and they don't do it. We have a place with 8 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, so players can come and stay, and we're right among the players, and they don't do it. 10 minutes of yoga. We tell people, take the Habit poem and put it on your refrigerator. It's like Steve Jobs, not too friendly, perhaps. People say, was a mean boss, but, just shut up and do it. Mr. Wonderful from the Shark Tank has a couple clips on Steve Jobs. And, don't put the pro in procrastination but with charting, the 5 E's, I should say, the 5 S's. I said the 5 E's. Remember Peter Boresh had 5 different E's. But with us, it's enjoyment. It's not hit and giggle. It's education, experience, exposure, environment. But the 5 S's, you could chart self-management. You could chart numbers for stroke production. You can chart, the S is strategy, stroke strategy, stats. Get it right. Self-management, strokes, strategy, stats, score. Match count. How many sets do you make? We were very unsuccessful when Jim Lair came up with that monitoring sheet. Like how many phone calls do you make per week? Kids don't call anybody up to set up matches. I think the NTRP really was a negative for that, where back in the day, the junior versus veteran matches. I think especially indoor tennis, living in Texas, you have a lot of nice weather, but these kids that grow up north and they go off to play a tournament, they're not playing any sets. They're just in a group of 6 and balls being fed to them. Anything that could be measured to be improved. I think with video, we go back to the history of video, but the history of charting. Let's go with video first, film. For me, my first, said it before in these podcasts, high school football coach, Sam Volo. And, so once I'm in junior high and you're not in a self-contained classroom, and you had a high enough GPA, you could sign out of study hall. So I'd watch high school football on Monday. Lunch period, PE, and study hall. And it's like, wow, slow motion sequence and analyzer. That culture of football is so far advanced to tennis. Not even comparable how the two sports are coached. In all fairness to tennis years ago, there'd be one coach at a college match, high school matches, and there's 6 matches. We find we will actually give a film to a kid and they don't even look at it. Technical or tactical. With Braden would film everything. Then when I worked at a college for between 81 and 91, being in Tyler, Texas, George Wilson was in charge of the AV department.
Mm-hmm.
Lombardi, Jerry Kramer wrote the book Instant Replay. They'd look at film, and the late Max McGee, they'd come out every Monday. He goes, I thought we won that game. Because it was just mistake, correction. Watching the pros, I don't really think, okay, racket awareness, are they are they really looking at film, like when you missed, why you missed? With what else you got with charting or filming?
Well, I mean, I think both are critical. We talked a lot about the filming. I think the charting, there's a million systems. I love several of them. I've talked about this one before. We took it up a level just by accident. I think it's a great way to have multiple kids on the court learning, but still playing where, the two charters on everybody, two kids are playing, two kids are charting. And we do that bucket drill a lot. And we started having the kids just put, if I'm playing you, Steve, and you make a forehand ground stroke error, which I know you never would with that swing of yours.
It was more the grip.
Yeah, better than mine though. Anyways, the player just marks FG wide or FGW, and so and this bucket's just filled up at the end, and then we go through and we make the cluster. So it's a little bit of a combination of that with Jennifer Roberts' old cluster chart system, and there's these piles of balls at the end. That, you can do it in tiebreakers or mini sets for all or whatever, and it paints a pretty good picture that for a lot of kids, I think, it helps illustrate it and that it's just a game of error reduction and where they're missing. I mean, people are just missing all over the place. And it gives, I think charting really gives some strength to the tactical system, of what we're trying to do in the GreatBase, and the simple concept of percentage lines and percentage posts. And gosh, if people just took that, quit arguing about whether the finish on the forehand looks good to them, and just let's take the concept of the percentage post and talk about that, because, it's a game of errors. And it's kind of, that's as much of an epidemic as anything. And obviously some of those errors are a result of technical, but I think there's really bad tactical teaching going on out there, and as to what people are doing. And I think charting and filming in combination is very powerful. I love filming match play. I love having people watch their match. I know the kids love Swing Vision because they can watch a whole set in about 11, just minutes, right? Because it cuts out the dead time, which is so critical. And I actually had a guy reach out to Swing Vision and try to suggest that they have the other end of that too, where they do just show the between point, because I remember Lair doing that. And that could be another add-on to their app that they have. But I think it's unlimited, and I think it really helps tennis coaches and teachers stay engaged, stay on the court with a purpose to try to keep growing a student, and just critical stuff.
Early this morning, I reviewed a college videotape that we made this past week, and it's a player just introducing themselves and say thank you. And I realize your schedule is hectic, therefore I will call your office to try to set up an appointment to talk to you. But it's just moving your feet, hitting balls. It's not technical at all. You show the basic shots, and they're playing points, play singles. We throw in ghost doubles. But yeah, college videos to make those. Post videos. We have 3 people leaving tomorrow, and we're grinding them today, and we'll film them tomorrow. The operation was a success, but the patient died. So you came here, some of these brother, sister, they're only here 4 days. And it's like, okay, we're going to work. And, they don't come in and hit balls. They tested it first and just tell them, okay, this is what we're going to do over the next 4 days. So, practice from the movie Hoosiers, practice is not designed for your pleasure, it's designed for your improvement. But I forgot, get a visual on that when Jennifer Roberts, maiden name, she married Jim, Morgat. So, and he had a long time in tennis as a player and a coach. But she spent 2 years with Scotty Perelman. So yeah, it was so that people get a visual on it, it was, your 8.5 to 11 piece of paper, but, laying on its side horizontally. So the tennis court's diagram. So the cluster, like a cluster of peanuts, a cluster of stars. And you just like BHD. So the ground strokes. It just, I think the simplest way to do that is just diagram a tennis court and get one of those pins where you click it and it's blue, and you click it and it's red. And I know today, being politically correct, you're not supposed to mark a kid's paper in red, but when you start putting the unforced errors in red, it looks like you had a nosebleed on the piece of paper. But yeah, put your brains down. Jim Verdick. Jim Verdick's the only coach I know that I've had as a guest in my house a couple of times. He charted every point. He's watching tennis. He's not going to watch tennis without charting. Amazing. Then you really know what's going on. That's a work ethic. But anyway, so Scotty Perelman was doing some things with the USTA this summer. Now he's coaching at TCU. He's from Monroe, Michigan. He might be 7-0 this year. He's close to hitting that benchmark. But I sent him a text the other day. I said, I'm telling everyone I know that someone I spent a lot of time with, a good friend, is 100% responsible for Ben Shelton's serve. And then I said, and also his athletic ability. Yeah, but he played the other day, Shelton. He won 90% of the points behind his first serve. That's where it's like, whoa. I mean, it's such a weapon. With, how many serves does someone hit? People really need to know. Like, here's something to chart. Most group lessons start off with kids going across the court hitting forehands. By the way, Braden hated that drill. Just going across the court. You actually are better off to go the opposite way, go backwards across the court, get further away from the ball. Because it really was a match simulated, just going across the baseline, hitting forehand ground strokes. But when people chart, a lot of times the serve's kind of an afterthought. They do it at the end of the lesson. But how many balls does someone hit? I'm always telling people, like today, I said, we go immersion days, and it's nice and cool up here in the mountains. And I said, not hundreds, but thousands of kids today are being told how to hit the ball inefficiently. Down together, up together, scratch your back, come over the ball, stay down, knife your volleys, on and on and on. But then also too is that, like, we made a video for you, and I'm pretty sure that if you're 15 years old, you've shifted your head every time you've hit a serve. So it's not to be sensationalistic, but you got the good pile and the bad pile, no bad reps. And but yeah, charting. You can put kids in groups of 3. You can have a tosser, a filmer, and a hitter. And they have fun doing that. And they go through the strokes on their own. Mm-hmm. And you can do the same thing when they play points. I like when you said the bucket, just so we go over that again. You get 2 ball baskets, and one player is playing the other player. So you have 2 players watching 2 players, correct? You can do it that way?
Yeah.
It helps with group dynamics. Yeah,
it's an effective way to do it. And I think when you're sitting on the sideline putting balls in unforced error buckets, I think it's a little easier for people to see when they're not emotionally attached to actually playing the points. And then they, sometimes it's easier to connect the dots that they're the ones out there making those same kind of just repeated errors that don't make sense. So many redirections from neutral and defensive position, in the red zone and things like that. I think that the charting and the filming, help us keep fighting the battle, right? It's kind of a drip on the rock theory with coaching. And, eventually it does wear through, but you just got to give the daily drip.
With charting and filming, obviously when it comes down to tournament time, you can back off, just like the swimmers would know. Okay, we have to taper off. They're going to swim. They're going to cut the number of meters or the number of yards that they swim. Braden used to say, you're thinking about technique, you're going to finish second in the field of two. You want to get to the point where you're free of technique. But when it comes down to the basics with, are you filming yourself doing routines? Every kid who's really serious about their tennis, they should have a pole and a camera. And, get together with someone and, film yourself doing the quadrant tournament or the tiebreaker test. You got to say you hit six basic shots and you have to hit them in the quadrants of the court. It's always designated. We had a tournament yesterday, quadrant tournament. Before we started, I said, this player will win. And the player won. And I said, everybody over here, I said, how did I know? Why did I know? Because it's not really a matter of who's fit and who's fast. It's a matter of just feeding the ball right to them and can they hit the target. I used to love the Vandermeer drill where you can do this with a few players. Is one player is feeding, one player is hitting, the other player is marking where the forehands land. Just hit 10 forehands, aiming on the inside of the percentage post, going cross court, and where do they land? And it's like, if this is said in other sports, that kid couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. If he was a basketball player and he's in a rowboat in the Pacific Ocean, he couldn't hit water. But yeah, they need to measure that. I told an older gentleman today, I said, you have to realize when you're out hitting golf balls, because people come up here to this resort and they'll play golf, you're playing against the course. Braden, when you're playing tennis, you're playing the toad on the other side. And of course, as a comedian, he referred to himself as Toad. So he had people loving him. Yeah, we always use that when Crummy plays crummier. Who wins? Crummy wins, but they don't know they're crummy because they just beat crummier. But other sports, baseball players, the batting average, basketball players, how good are they from the free throw line? But, actually to have 4 kids, they're better off to play one set doing what you're saying with putting the balls in the bucket on unforced errors than giving them 2 courts and have them go play 2 sets. Because you just got to get people to stop and think. And, in other sports, it is very good that you can put a kid on the bench. You can take him out. It's very powerful. You keep missing wide on the forehand side. And, that's where parents, I think they just cross their fingers. They put their kid in another tournament and SSDD. To know what the plus minus is. So we pick on the pros. So we had a player leaving for one of the national tournaments, 18s. Winner gets to go to the U.S. Open. It's a pretty big deal. And so we're going through, well, you don't know the red zone from the yellow zone. You don't get the GVP. This is the number of unforced errors you made. This is how many times you miss wide. But then also to tell the players that are listening, is that, wait a minute. She's been number 1 in the country. She went to play the Wimbledon 14s or she played the La Petite. And I think that's important too, to try to teach perspective. I'd love to have kids, this gets away from document development, but it's a little morbid with the late Stephen Covey. Today we're going to write your eulogy. What would someone write about you? But when you ask kids to just take a few minutes and write a bio. And, one side point is I'd love to have people say, I'm a student of the game. A student, tennis is a passion of mine, and I'm a student of the game. I'm learning to play and teach. I'd like to today chart people with how they interact and just make a note of it. Charting is just recording. So we're doing these partner drills, and one kid has to go to the washroom, and so then one advanced player, and he says, because the other player goes to the washroom, comes back, no, you just pair up with this person. And then the more advanced player came back from the washroom. He rearranged the group where, oh, now I'm back with who I was with. And I just told him, I said, I got that. That, and that's where, the little things turn into big things. And you just, why do people freak out? Why do they get so tight? Who's going to be in my group? Who am I going to hit with? And, the biggest thing is winning. And winning is a bonus. But, when a match is over, and I think people go back to our previous podcast, we certainly honored Bill Jacobson, is one to just say, what's your plus minus? I tell people all the time, I ask them questions and they can't answer. And I said, no, you're doing a good job with the surface information. Your technique is improving, but I cannot, you stop, pause. I cannot have a high level conversation with you. You don't even know how long the tennis court is. You don't know how wide it is diagonally. You just don't know. And you think about other sports. Can you imagine a guard in basketball not knowing plays, or a quarterback, the captain of the defense, or let's say a middle linebacker, they don't know the formations? We ask.
They don't play.
Yeah. I mean, I ask kids today, what is a fumble? And I go, come on, you're living in America. You got to know what a fumble is. But the plus minus, on the plus column, and then on the minus column. The only thing on the minus column is your unforced errors. If you're doing who touches the ball last and you have a minus column, you got to circle it, because if a person misses, it's a forced error. They touch the ball last. That's a positive for the person who hit the shot. Today, two improving players were playing, and the big difference was one player just would not capitalize on the short ball. And the same player, faster than fast, but would not hit and recover. And, those are the things too that need to be shown. It's like, well, okay, we get stuck in the mud because, say, for example, a kid has an open racket face on a ground stroke. Well, they have an open racket face. Here's a couple of Braden sentences. If the racket face is open, you cannot let the racket free fall with gravity. If the racket face is open, you will not be able to truly swing inside out. And so we get stuck on technique. I've made this point many, many times today. There's people all over the world, hundreds, thousands and thousands of kids that were lied to. But that's where, if they have the right character, they have the right compete level, will is going to beat skill. But to really, really be good, you have to have both will and skill. And I think the ways that you can film and try to do the best you can, the tangibles and intangibles, try to do the best that you can with the intangibles. What else we got for documenting development?
Well, I definitely think they're a combination, video and then charting system, and they're kind of like peanut butter and jelly. And alone, they both are still pretty good, but together, I think they can really, really help people. And I think that you could, if every day we as coaches put it at the top of our priority list to make it happen, I think that our students benefit. And I do a lot of what you just said, Steve, in that just send kids off with a basket. And, when I hire coaches and we onboard them and take them through a process, I make it very clear to them that there are an equal number. We have a staff of 25, 26 coaches, maybe 27 now. And I said there's double that amount of kids that can outcoach many coaches, or at least coach as well as them, in terms of just teaching. And so when you have that student, you got to build a Navy SEAL in your program or in your classes that you have, and then they have to be really a tremendous ambassador for everything that we are trying to do, and they can almost impact a program greater than anything else, I think.
I think that, the kids, I tell them all the time, are highly intelligent. That's not the problem. It's the emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to ask questions. Okay, what do I mean by 60 shots? And that's another thing to chart with. You're going to rotate players. And, you can have an older player tell the young player, you play any way you want. And tell the older player, how many touches do you have to beat this kid? And the goal would be 60. Serve and volley.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4 points, 12 touches times 3 games, 36. And on the return, they should be able to move through an approach shot, get their nose over the net. And, you 8 touches, 2 games, 3 games, that's 24 and 60 touches. And, people are just hanging on the racket like a frying pan. They run around their backhand and they're just aiming for the fences. And the tennis is leaving tennis. But in the end, with, you're off to nationals, players who are not going to nationals, if anybody's listening to this, you can beat players that are going to nationals. It's a long road. Think of someone who's, say 17. We're talking to a player. Here's a plan. Do this for 2 years and then do this for 3, maybe 4, 6 years from now. You're only 23 years old. You say you want to play pro tennis. My hockey background, my oldest brother he was really it wasn't the GM, he was the associate GM. Ken Dryden, the famous goalie, had the title. My brother was running the hockey operation from the on-ice side of it. And he didn't want the baby Leafs, the little Leafs to come in from Newfoundland or Nova Scotia, St. John's, wherever it is, where they were playing. But now they do play in Toronto. But the expression goes, no, we want to keep them down on the farm. To have a farm team. That's something that's very common in baseball. It's a farm team. And we're so wrong with tennis. I'm in the high performance group. I'm elite. Shot tolerance is another thing. With CompuTennis is, certainly I give people the gears when they start talking about, I hate pushers. You have to respect the defensive specialist. And, really in the end, the John Woodenism, never try to be better than your opponent. Is just get 1% better. And, just serves. Yeah, we're going to work on spot serving, but right now when you serve, you're hitting 2 big second serves to the body. Because, okay, that's the level you're at right now. That'd be like in basketball years ago where a right-handed player, could make a left-handed layup. So you have to let people, and I think that's a major problem with the UTR where kids, I think everybody years ago played a tournament and go, well, I haven't been playing, but in the first round, this is what we're going to do the first round because I haven't been playing. I might lose the first set playing this way, but I'm not losing this match. But then you're just like, well, it's not a true match anymore because you play a 10-point tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But, to ink it, to think it, ink it, think it, put your brains down. I mentioned that earlier is that I think what's so important is monitoring time management. What do you do on your own? And, do these kids have any note-taking time? Do they just reflection? Okay, could you just sit in a room by yourself? Parents listen to me all the time. And, kids today, a negative is they don't daydream. They're not daydreaming. They're not in their own thought process because as soon as practice is over, they're on their phone. It's just constant. Let's go to the guy from Greece. What do you got? We'll wrap this thing up here. What do you think? Filming, charting.
No, I mean,
We could not to interrupt you, but we could talk about Tsitsipas.
I think it's just the charting and the videotaping is just evidence of what's going on. There's no, it's just there, and there's no arguing behind it. You just if you videotape someone, you show it to them, and you just press the post button, and you can't really argue about it. And the same with charting. It's just facts. And then I think because the industry doesn't do that, it's just people don't see, I guess, the value of it until it's done for them. But I think it's an eye-opening experience, not only for the students but the parents too. I think that's where the GreatBase, and here in Wintergreen, for the parents especially, it's just like, wow, they really see the value of it. But yeah,
with I've been told that young people today, you got to give them a visual.
yeah.
So if you, it certainly takes time. The technology is there now. It's not expensive. Let's say first set, someone misses 18 forehands. And no, 18 forehands. Well, if you think of circular swing, you've got your return serve, you got your ground stroke, you got your approach shot, your passing shot, and the swing ball. That's 5 times. And how many times did you miss on that pattern? With one of my brother's friends years ago, he had a DWI, driving while intoxicated. So he went to the school to keep the points down. And I know it gets to be really serious. I know people have been arrested multiple times, and it's really interesting. It was on this old TV show, Johnny Carson, the different punishments around the world for DWI. I mean, you're talking death sentence years ago, some places. Taking you outside the country, outside the city, and you got to walk 25 miles. I mean, they actually go right to your paycheck. It's pretty serious crimes, pretty serious offense. It should be. So anyway, one of my brother's friends, it didn't help out that he was a bartender. So they're asked to chart how many drinks. There's like 10 in the class. How many drinks did everybody have? So he goes last, and I had 2, and I had 3. I didn't have any, and it's his turn. He goes, I had 72. And you divide by 7. He's had a few beers, and that's where you have to have somebody else drive. But but I do think people don't really make changes because they're not aware. They should be. Braden, you chart to have the objective data on how to structure practice, and then also to creative sets. If you say, okay, we'll play one set where you're on offense. Like now I play set, so you're coming in you're being super aggressive, and then the next one you're counterattacking, you're playing defense, and then you play a combination of both. To chart, can you imagine? We tell people, all right, skip rope, minimum 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, 12 minutes. That's all. That's a minimum. You're busy with school. You got a paper due, exams, 12 minutes a day. And then I have this archive. Okay, this is the first time I met you. Okay, I want to know what day I met you. So not only to have the post film, I got, this is the day I met you. And this is what you got on the skills test. But we told you that day, this is a routine you're supposed to do. And if that number was on their sleeve, I mean, you would know by just putting your hand on on a kid's shoulder. You're really working your shoulders when you skip rope. You would know when the kid walks through the door if they're doing that skip rope routine. I mean, with parents will buy the ladder, the footwork, but they don't do it. And and then really in the end, this is someone just being mature beyond their years, and it's just this is what I have to do. Really in the end, that old line, I've spent my life saying the right things to the wrong people. I told you to do this. I told you to do it. You didn't do it. Let's go one more comment each and we'll sign off. Documenting development, our podcast, we got to go back and do some developmental work. Then we could be better. What do you got, Costas? One more thing. How about Tsitsipas? When he was a kid.
No, I mean, I know a lot of stories to talk to him.
But did they use film? Did they chart?
No, we did not use film. We did not use film. We didn't really use chart either. But I'm trying to think of stuff we did a lot. I mean, he played a lot. He played everyone, and he played everyone he could get a hold of. So like, all the adults at the club. My father played with him. My father played with his brothers, with his second older brother. He just played with everyone who he could get a hold of, doubles, singles. And it was I think he really didn't, in his head from a young age, he didn't really have an alternative. I think himself, and I'm not going to speak for himself and his parents, they had it in the paper for him to be a tennis player from a very young age. And kind of looking at the young kids that we have now at our program, I was around with him about that age. So I really got to see that phase of his life between 8 to 14, 15. People would ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, he would say, I want to win a Grand Slam, when he was 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And, a lot of times when you're at the dinner table, it might come off kind of different when you say that, but that, and he meant it, and it was just, it came off maybe different at the time, because most people say, I want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, or a plumber, but that's what he said. And I think in his head, it was, he didn't have alternatives in his head. It was just.
Yeah, I think born into the opportunity where his grandfather was on the World Cup soccer team that won, the Soviet teams. Mother's a pro athlete. Dad was a physical educator.
His father was a very good athlete. I mean, he had a strong build. I know his uncle was a very good volleyball player and coached at a very high level. And the way he was built as a kid, he was a fairly thin, he didn't have any extra weight on him, but he had very straight shoulders. From a young age, he looked like a swimmer almost. When it comes to his skill set, he wasn't necessarily the fastest, the strongest, but he always was very well-rounded, almost like, I think I've said this before, like a decathlete. Like he was like the jack of all trades, if that expression makes sense. He could run the 400s very well. He could also run the sprint, but he wasn't a stud in anything. And then very, very, mentally, I think of like a guy who's clutch. He was just very mentally tough. He could turn games around from down in the score, and he was very good under pressure. He wouldn't choke as much as other people. But sorry, I'm getting off tangent.
No. That's good to hear. The big pressure. I just shake my head. We have kids tossing balls to other kids, respectable players, and they can't catch the ball. They can't catch, but they didn't grow up playing other sports. And, so I think with pressure, years ago, if you dropped a ball, the coach would snap your name out, it's like, come on. But yeah, I just think obviously, the lifestyle, who you're around, the day-to-day.
I remember a couple of things, just interesting fact. So we would play soccer a lot on the court with like this little small ball, kind of like how Ilya has the kids with 2 cones on each side. And then the other things he used to have us to do as extras was the ladder, skip rope, and then a big one we had to do a lot was it was like a balance board, and it underneath it had a ball, and you basically had to none of the ends would touch the floor.
Right.
If that makes sense. We did that a lot. And then I remember my coach, our court, we always practiced on the same court. So our court was next to the street. You know, you wouldn't tell by seeing me how I hit the ball because I shank a lot. But when we shanked a ball, we had to go under the fence and go on the street and pick up the ball.
The balance board, we had one downstairs.
Yeah, that's the right thing.
And we had one downstairs, and no one uses it unless they're told to. And that's, again, because of the telephone. Years ago, I'm going to try that. We're going to have some fun with that. I tell the story all the time that I was at a banquet, speakers, called him Tex, basketball coach. He was the assistant coach of the Chicago Bulls, Coach Michael Jordan. And he spoke like an hour and a half. Everybody else, I think so many people were disgruntled. I thought it was great. But he said people made fun. The teammates of Jordan made fun because he got on that and he couldn't do it. But 3-4 days later, I mean, he was obsessed and he was the best. He couldn't do that. But he put the time in. I can't do that, so I'm going to just over and over again. All right, Davey Anderson, Zoobound. Tell us one thing and we'll call it a day. I hope the listeners find value in another podcast. 260.
Yeah, filming and charting. I think advice for myself and, to follow, as well as advice for people to take, would be pre-film students, post-film them in between, archive all of it. Another thing I'd written down that I failed to mention earlier is for any of the teachers and coaches out there, film your own lessons. Film yourself giving a lesson. That was advice Steve gave to me back when I had hair. And, I did it a lot for 2 to 3 years, and it's humbling. And you find yourself not doing a lot of the little things, just like we were saying about players. I think it's a great practice. As far as charting, there's numerous systems, but I think that you need to understand, the purpose of charting. I think that we need to teach ourselves numerous systems of charting. You need to teach your staff. If you're in control of a staff, you need to teach your parents how to chart, and you need to teach your players how to chart. And I think that those are great rainy day projects for people that don't have access to a lot of indoor courts, things like that, but they don't even have to be reserved for a rainy day. They should just be part of the ongoing curriculum in terms of education. And I think these are two key things that we're going through tonight, and I think it could, really impact players and really impact programs and really help coaches be more stimulated in their career.
Yeah, your theme, go back to the future. We used to have students wear backpacks, and they'd have a tape recorder in the backpack, and they would film themselves or record themselves, the audio, just the audio, and then they had to type out a manuscript. And that brings back memories. The hard yards. But Dave Anderson, thanks for your time. Listeners, thanks for listening. And say something in Greek before you sign off. Come on, give us something in Greek.
Let me see. I want to say something cool, but...
You like vanilla ice cream? How do you say that nice in Greek?
Okay. Μου αρέσει το παγωτό με γεύση βανίλα.
We had a coach from Greece come, and he loved ice cream. So like 4 days in a row, we take him to
Dairy Queen.
Not Dairy Queen. What's it called? Stone Edge or Stone Cold?
Yeah, I've heard of this one. Yeah.
And so he was there. We went for ice cream like so many nights in a row. And so my son Connor, I remember, he said, "You're not leaving, are you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm leaving in like 3 days." He goes, "Yeah," because he just wanted to go get ice cream because but anyway. All right. Adios, amigos. 260. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Safe
Thank
travels.
you. Have a good night.
Yeah. Adios. Bye.
Congrats on 5 years.
Yeah. Thanks.
You bet. Have a good night.
Yeah.